A little bit about me. I've been around children's services for longer than a good few years, and I currently am the partnership and program lead for Thrive at Five, and I'll talk a little bit about Thrive at Five. But I've had a career that's included research with regard to working for the National Evaluation of Sure Start, and consequently moving through early years through to an assistant director in children's services. I was also seconded into central government and was the senior ambassador for the Reducing Parental Conflict Programme, and got involved in a lot of work across government departments, including cross-government delivery of family hubs, and work with Department of Health and Social Care and the Public Health England, as it was known before OHID. So I'm delighted to be here to share with you some of the work from my current position, which is a partnership and program lead for Thrive at Five, a new charity which I'm going to describe now. I was going to share my screen and hope that it will do what I want it to do, and someone will let me know if that's sharing.
Yes, we can see you, just can't see the slideshow.
Okay, I'm just going to go to the slideshow now. Are we there?
Yes, perfect. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Okay. I'm just going to take this transcript off because it's recording every word I say, and it's very disconcerting. Thrive at Five. I'm going to describe why Thrive and just talk a little bit about the early years. I'm not going to go through that at any great length because you'll already know the context of why the early years is very important. I want to talk a little bit about what we are doing in our Pathfinder in Stoke-on-Trent, and some detail around the parent survey, including some additional evaluative work that's going on, and also some work we're doing to enhance some of the data collection in Stoke-on-Trent regarding our progress towards intermediate outcomes through additional health visitor collection of data across a range of questionnaires and scales, and then a little bit about the future, if that works for you. So Thrive at Five is a national charity. It's a very new charity, been in existence for about 3 years, with a real appetite to make change happen. And that's why I'm delighted to be associated with this network, because I think it's all about making change happen for us to improve children's lives. And we recognise in Thrive at Five that one of the routes to ensure that children's get the best start in life in the early years is to work purposefully with parents in order that they can help their children be the best that they can be by being the best parent that they're able to be. So it's about making an impact and recognizing that children really are our future, and you'll see that there's a quote about our mission. It's about actually coordinating services across the public, private and voluntary sector. We're there to add value, we're there to actually convene and encourage further partnership working across a common agenda. We operate under the broad banner of collective impact, and the 5 conditions that encourage collective impact, and this was a concept that was devised through the Stanford Social Innovation Review. And collective impact is very much about getting people to agree a common agenda. Our common agenda for our work in Thrive at Five equally is around, as I've described there, parents and children being the best that they can be, but equally we need a proxy measure to prove that we are changing some of the circumstances surrounding families and children. And so it's very important to have a common agenda and some sense of shared measurement. And our shared measurement, really, our North Star, is essentially improvements in good level of development at the end of the foundation stage, which with its various components can be quite a challenge to have an influence over all of those, but I will share with you as we go through some of the success that I think we're beginning to see. The most important part of this is around that common agenda is actually identifying mutually reinforcing activities and making sure that settings and places where parents and children go have activities that will actually support the common agenda and support our shared measurement goals around the early years foundation stage. The most important part of this is actually being a continuous communication through the partnerships that we have developed in Stoke-on-Trent. And we see ourselves as a backbone organisation, not necessarily a delivery organisation, but mobilising the system to work in a coordinated and collaborative way in order that we achieve the outcomes that we have agreed. It's very important in collective impact that organisations and practitioners are on the same page towards the goals that we see as being important to setting the life course for young children in a good place so that they continue to develop and grow. You know, this evidence that we've seen now coming out from UCL and various other places that actually scores at the end of the foundation stage are fairly predictive of the key stage 4 outcomes now, and we see our role as very much about embedding these approaches across the age range. Starting in early years is where we're focusing on, and moving forward through the other primary and secondary school stages. The Thrive at 5, our first Pathfinder, is in Stoke-on-Trent. We've recently got a team that's set up in Redcar and Cleveland, looking to do some more work in the northeast and moving into Scotland as well, with an aim of having between 5 and 6 Pathfinders throughout the country. We are supported. I'm very grateful for Stoke-on-Trent City Council and the ICB contributing to some of our core costs, but we're essentially an organisation that relies on philanthropic funding from foundations and individuals, and we remain very grateful to those organisations for enabling us to do what we do. You will all be aware of Bronfenbrenner's ecological version of the impact on child and immediate family. Our concentration is about thinking around the immediate family, the household and the child, but recognizing that we need to actually be influencing kinship and informal networks, friends, cultural groups and neighbours, and equally we need to actually be working in the local environment with formal networks, and you can see some of those named there. But actually we in Thrive at 5 have got a greater ambition to be influencing broader economic policy and social and wider environments around the early years, so working in collaboration with organisations such as this to actually help get the message out and also supply the evidence base of what works. We're a very evidence orientated organisation, and anything that we deploy within an area essentially has an evidence base, or we are developing the evidence base for the approaches that are being adopted. Collective impact is being used throughout the world as a way to challenge some of these deep-rooted social issues. We're working in areas of greatest challenge and need, where we know that children in disadvantaged areas perform less well across a range of indicators, and it's important that we build on that knowledge and actually secure ways to improve the lives and the outcomes for those in our place-based geography. And we are operating in quite tight geographies. In Stoke-on-Trent, it's 2 wards. They are very high on the index of child deprivation, and have some particular issues that I'll go into as we move forward. And we also know, this is from Harvard, and the neural connections for different functions develop sequentially, but actually pre-birth and in the first year of birth, we know that those neural pathways are so vitally important. And I'll be providing you some illustrations of the way in which we're encouraging both what we're making available, but equally what parents are able to do in order to stimulate both language, sensory pathways, and those higher cognitive functions that occur at that point. And just to put this into a degree of context in the area where I'm working at the moment, this is not my slide, I can't take credit for it, but I quite like it, is about how do we change from a system that's very reliant on potentially statutory services by elongating the universal and early help. And that's quite difficult to do because of resources and the focus of individual organisations. But going back to the point about a common agenda, there's something I think that we can begin to do to reshape it. Stoke-on-Trent are not happy to be the top of the per capita of the number of children in care of the local authority, around about 1 in 55 children in the care of the local authority, and they are attempting, but actually doing something really innovative about actually closing that point of entry into social care and other statutory services by trying to work across the system to actually extend what happens in the universal and universal plus early help, the targeted early help that often is associated with the Supporting Families programme, but actually thinking about how do we work earlier with families in order to avoid some of the escalation that occurs because there are not enough eyes on children early enough. This is a quote from Al Ainsley Green in a blog that he did, and I quite like it. There is a mismatch between our wonderful science and all of our services and the dismal failure of politicians to recognise the importance of children. Chiselled in letters of stone over every department of state should be this: we need healthy, educated, creative, resilient and happy children with the life skills to become a productive adult of the future and a competent parent of the future. And what I'm seeing in Stoke-on-Trent is often some intergenerational transmission of parenting practices that are not necessarily helpful. So we've got a task to do in order to support parents, as I said, to be the best parents that they're able to be moving forward. So we work in 2 wards, Bentley and Abbey Halton in Stoke-on-Trent. As I mentioned, they're very high on the index of deprivation. There are around 2,000 children under 5. I've just mentioned living with generation patterns of parenting, and some of those family norms are not helpful, and I'm sure those on the call will recognise areas where this has occurred. There is a limited issue around mobility in the wards where we're working. In fact, parents in Stoke-on-Trent do not move very far from their home environments, and 0.6 miles is the most frequent distance that parents in those wards will move around. Parents with a child with SEND are quite prevalent, but the context of their lives are quite challenging, and a great deal of invisible families, the ones that won't come, there's too few eyes on children, and we know that those are the families who would most benefit from some of the support that's being made available to them. I always recognise and need to remind myself and others that I need to come at this with humility. The lives that we are want to help and support to change are not like mine. And so constantly I'm reminding myself that we must not purely locate issues in individuals. We need to locate the issues in the context in which people have to live. I'm just reading a really interesting book called Poverty and Stress, or it might be Stress and Poverty, which talks about the issue of poverty and how it affects the way in which parents are able to act. Another book called Scarcity by can't remember his name, it's just disappeared off my head, but actually talks about the cognitive bandwidth that is available for parents where there are other challenges in their lives, asking parents to think about home learning environments when they're worried about food and when they're worried about uniform and other things, can be a bit of a challenge, especially if they're in temporary accommodation, and overcrowding. All of those sorts of things impact on their ability. And that book is by Elder Shafir. It's just come into my head. Our focus informed discovery and evidence. What we've seen, we spent a lot of time in Thrive at 5 in a period called discovery, and we begin to understand what it is that parents are facing rather than coming in with assumptions. And so we worked with Nesta and Dartington Service Lab really to begin to map out what's the ecology of the areas where we're going to work. And as a result, we've come to some conclusions about the work streams that we need to be considering, and considering the way in which we can help. During discovery, and no surprise to you because of the impact of COVID and other circumstances, we knew that early language and communication was going to be a focus. Last year, in reception in one particular school with a two-form intake of 60 children, 57 of those children failed their speech and language assessment. In Stoke, there's something called Stoke Speaks Out, which has a score, and 57% of those children were in amber or red. And we'll talk a little bit about what we did about that soon. We've got to work on improved parental and caregiving mental health. That's obvious from our discovery. Attachment and responsive parenting, no surprise there. We've actually were able to bring to a seminar Elizabeth Rapper to talk about the Oxford Brain Story and serve and return and executive function, etc., where 100 or plus practitioners were able to hear that story and begin to think about how their practice might be able to change as a result of the information that was being provided and their interactions with parents and children. And we know high quality education and care is an important feature, as is good home learning environments. But equally, we also need to recognise the issue about building community capacity, thinking about asset-based community development, and thinking about the resources that exist within communities so that they become more child-friendly, but equally the hyper-local charities and voluntary sector organisations, the work that they can do in collaboration, not just with Thrive at 5, but actually with the statutory partners that exist. So our focus has been informed by discovery, and it matters that we adhere to those in order that we get some opportunities for evidence-based programs to support that. We are very conscious as well during the issue of COVID about the powerful role of transitions, particularly from home to nursery and nursery to school. So last year we had a program called Ready Steady Stoke. We've continued it this summer, and it was about actually encouraging schools to engage with parents and children across the summer holiday, and we invested both in terms of resource and some of our staff to support a program of 4 weeks of stay and plays in schools to support the transition. And the evaluations are the early years teachers and parents we interviewed did engage heavily in different project strands, were very positive about what happened. In terms of the work within schools, early years teachers found that it enhanced the child and parent familiarisation with the school and opportunities for children to learn. and parents spoke about the improved parent-school relationship. We also, on top of this, undertook a transitional tool where children entering the reception year were given it's called Mouse Club. They actually get a mouse, and the aim of that mouse and that transitional object is to support them in getting the mouse ready for school in order that they can engage with creating uniforms, creating work, creating maps, using the mouse as that tool. And although I haven't got photographs here, it's been very successful, and we are running it for the second year. And children love it, schools love it, parents love it, and the mouse gets up in time for school in the morning, helping the child think about when it goes to school, about when it might need to get up in the morning. So a very useful and practical tool for supporting transitions. Following on from Ready Steady Stoke, and it's happening this year as well, we're working with the 7 project schools that are in our locality, supporting the implementation of proven speech and language programs. We've worked with schools, and I'll be talking a little bit more about this, about the development of parent, baby and toddler groups as a direct reaction to parents saying they had nowhere to go with their children 0 to 2. And we're continuing to build relationships and a network with early years partners and practitioners, including health visitors, including perinatal, especially perinatal health, schools, voluntary sector organisations and statutory partners. So language development, and it continues to be a real concern for schools as children are coming into reception. Because of the issue that I illustrated earlier around the numbers of children requiring additional input on speech and language, it's very difficult for reception class teachers and other early years professionals and TAs to actually offer small group programs into their reception year class. We are very conscious of the evidence base around NELI, the Nuffield Early Language Intervention, and we've introduced a way of building capacity within the partnership in order to deliver this proven speech and language program. So we've collaborated with Staffordshire University on undergraduate students who are on the early childhood degree courses to be trained to deliver NELI to great effect. We've seen some very strong indication that the work of moving children from amber and red into a more positive green element of the score is proving very successful. For students, they actually get some opportunity to engage with children and parents, but actually also they've also get accredited to be able to deliver NELI as part of their portfolio of placements. Other programs are being introduced into nurseries, because we recognise if it's a reception and there is speech and language issues, we're not in there early enough. So we are exploring other programs like Talking Time, which will work with early years settings, be that the private, voluntary or independent sector, as well as school nursery classes. And we've been able within the area to leverage some additional grants that have created opportunities for schools to have grants for those parents who are unable to afford new uniforms or shoes. And equally, we've opened up some hygiene banks in order that parents who forego some of the things like deodorants because of food requirements have an opportunity to have some of the basics. So there's a lot going on around what we're trying to do to support others in order to achieve the outcomes that we know are formative for future learning. Parent, baby and toddler groups, we mentioned, or might have been in the earlier meeting I had, but when we arrived in Stoke-on-Trent, parents were telling us there were no places to go for 0 to 2s. They were feeling very socially isolated. Of course, COVID was part of that, but actually there is a high degree of social isolation within the community. And so we wanted to develop parent, baby and toddler groups. When we arrived, there were 3. Up to this point, there are 14 operating over quite a small geography, and the attendance on them is good. And variable. We've got a bit of work to do on that, but we are not providing any of the parent, baby and toddler groups. We've supported other organisations in order to deliver that, but provided them with clear policies and procedures with an indication of what quality provision looks like and what the learning intention should be. We've encouraged early years staff to model purposeful play with parents, and we're working alongside other early years support who go into these parent, baby and toddler groups in order to support the delivery. Health visitors are within those groups, popping in, offering in those informal spaces advice to parents, because parents have indicated that they really do want information, and I'll share that with you in a few more slides. So, oh, sorry, go back one. So this is some example of modelling what we're trying to do. There's reading, there's nursery rhymes, and actually we now have parents telling us that if their children can recite 8 nursery rhymes, they know the reading's going to be better. You can see a sensory pathway there that was being devised by one of the early years practitioners, bare feet and wandering along with different sensations. But the important part about it is not lecturing, it's sharing bite-sized pieces of information through modelling and not telling. One of our busy bees, which is a parent and toddler group in one of the academies, you can see children, young people, sorry, not young people, parents actually undertaking some of the activities with their children and interacting. These are groups where it's very purposeful in that we get parents to engage with their children. There are drinks and toast because that's quite an important feature of anything that we support, but the intention there is it's not for parents to sit around the edge. The intention is that parents interact with their children in a very positive way. We also have story sacks that parents are able to borrow. So if they see an activity that's being demonstrated, there are story sacks that we call booster bags, and they can actually take home and undertake some of the role play or the sensory activities that they've seen in the setting. So in the important bit about engagement, we support through that forum, we support parents with their concerns across the wards. I mentioned PBTs, there's 14 now, but some parents are attending more than one group, so that's encouraging that they're seeing them as places to go for information and activity with their young ones. Very pleased that the partnership have supported the rollout of this, and as I say, Thrive at 5 are facilitating these groups, but actually Thrive at 5 might not be there forever, although we're committed to 7 years of being in Stoke-on-Trent. These groups have got a life of their own now, and they can move on. I'm going to try, and I hope it will play, some feedback about the groups.
We find out different stages of development through little buzz sessions in the baby clubs as well. So stuff that I might have only found if I'd gone onto a deep dive of like on a website or something, I found out in like a little buzz group with other mums learning at the same time. We find
another one.
These 2 groups and the others that they do are amazing. Without them, I think it would be really terrible. I think the children would miss out. Parents, grandparents would. They're lovely groups. These 2 groups.
And one more. Oh, I
It
stopped
can
it.
pick you up so much in the morning. If you wake up having a bad day, you know for a fact as soon as you come in, you have a quick chat with some of the mums and you feel so much better by the end of it. It can pick.
Okay, so that was a little bit of oversight about Nellie, about the parent, baby, and toddler groups. There's a lot of other work going on within the area, but I felt it important just to share with you some of our survey work that's been going on, and we are fortunate to have an internal evaluation team who helped us with the development of this survey, and equally we have external evaluators, Centre for Evidence and Impact, in implementation, offering external support and some objective assessment of the impact of both the collective impact model and the various impacts that we're having across the system. So a parent survey, we were delighted to get 511 responses. About 200 were from the wards that we are actively working in, but actually 312 were from outside Thrive wards, which was really useful because it began to help us to have some comparison views of people who aren't experiencing necessarily the direct impact of Thrive. Over 200 of these responses have signed up to help with further research. So to mention to you there, anything that you might want to do as a research community, and you might want to do something in Stoke-on-Trent, talk to me. And we've got a parent newsletter which offers information to parents, and we've added 185. Very important mechanism for us getting messages out. Less information about is available as children get older, but the potential positive impact of Thrive's work. So if you look at the charts here, you will see that the blue, which is lots of information, those who attend a PBT once a week in Thrive wards, substantially more information was able to be absorbed as opposed to those who attend a PBT once a week in non-Thrive wards. And you'll see again Thrive wards and non-Thrive wards. The importance of this vehicle, this informal pathway to information, I don't think could be stronger in support of those in pregnancy. We also have just developed we need to engage parents early on in their journey into parenthood, and so we're holding baby showers with a whole range of contributors to that, be it sexual health, health visiting, National Literacy Trust, a whole raft of people supporting us in the delivery of that. But that information can be unsettling in some respects. Half the parents said they felt happy to receive information and were reassured, but nearly half said the information they got made them worried they were not doing enough. And that's a really important consideration about the way in which we interact with parents. 60% said the main thing that might stop parents and carers asking for help was feeling judged. And it's important to think that the environments in which people have to live can often make them feel less valued. And we need to always consider the relational approach that we adopt in terms of the way in which we interact, the language we use, and the respect that we need to provide to parents in those the circumstances they find themselves in. And parents feel so pressured to follow all the information. Sometimes it's financially not possible, or the pressure just about can ruin the whole experience from pregnancy. Attendance at parent, baby and toddlers, a third of parents hadn't heard about parent, baby and toddler groups in the areas across all respondents, where it's 17% in Thrive wards. So we are getting the message out, and 40% of parents never go to PBTs across all parents, compared to 34% in Thrive wards. But we're not resting on those statistics. We still need, we can recognise the value of parent, baby and toddler groups, these purposive places and spaces where parents can go. We need to do more to reach those who are less likely to come. In order to do that, we've got positions within my structure around parent connectors. These are not case holders. They're about walking alongside parents, encouraging them to come to groups, encouraging them to take up their free childcare offer, and supporting them without necessarily case holding. They become a feature of the community. They're in GP clinics, they're in school playgrounds, being there as a presence for parents. And here we go. What encourages parents to attend? Positive impact of parent connectors in our communications work. So there's a good element there of recommended by a professional in both our wards, but meeting a Thrive at 5 parent connector in Thrive wards has made an increase in the number of parents attending. But importantly, it's knowing someone who already attended. So building this peer network is seen as being a really, really important part of what we're trying to achieve. And we are seeing the development of strong peer networks between parents who attend our Babbling Babies parent, baby and toddler groups, and Sound Pots, which is a musical activity aimed at improving speech and language. Excuse me. What we are also trying to do is we have some intermediate outcomes that are really illustrated by the work streams that we identified earlier. We can't afford to wait until there are some mandated checks or the end of the foundation stage to find out whether we are making progress across the children that we're targeting. So we're working with our health visiting and school nursing provider, excuse me, to additionally collect data outside of the mandated checks. And we're looking and have funded or are funding the opportunity for possibly a Band 4 to collect additional health visitor data across these domains. We are looking to improve the strength of the parent-infant relationship, and the measure we're using for that is Mother's Object Relation Scale short form. We're looking at parent wellbeing through the Warwick Edinburgh Mental Wellbeing Scale, quality of the home learning environment, and that's the Toddler Home Learning Environment Scale, and ELIM for children's very early language and development. We know what happens at 2.5 years, but we need to get in much earlier, and we're looking for these checks to be take place at 1 year and 2 years to evaluate whether we are making progress towards our intermediate outcomes, ultimately that are informing our evidence-based delivery and support so that children do the best that they can when they are at the end of the foundation stage. It's a really interesting development, and I'm very happy to keep the network updated on what this can provide for early eyes on families to avoid that slide where I showed you around the entry into more intensive and statutory services. But it also will recognise, and we've recognised with our provider, that it will give early indication of whether additional support is needed, and we're very keen to see the results of this programme, which will be starting, we hope, within the next month or so. But a very exciting development with regard to both Thrive's desire for information and knowledge and evidence in order that it can inform as we move through our, refining what we're doing all the time. And as I say, really pleased with the cooperation that we've had with the organisation that supports health, that provides health visiting service in Stoke-on-Trent. Really delighted. Stoke priorities, I've just mentioned the enhanced data collection from health visitors, and timeline July. We're a little bit late on that, but we are working through that. Intermediate outcomes of parent-infant relationship and parental well-being. We are developing 0 to 2 work stream. We have on our advisory board some important support for this in the guise of Sally Hogg from Pedal, who will soon be going to the Royal Foundation, Alan Gregoire and Pasco Fieron, who sit on our advisory council, who will be informing us on the evidence-based approaches that we could do on. We've got a continued focus on home learning environment, and we continue to roll out PEEP across the practitioner base within the areas where we work. We're increasing the pace of workstream ownership to local partners, again thinking about the thinking around the issue of sustainability, mentioned the parent connector role, and I'm heavily involved within the wider Stoke City Council programmes around enhanced family support and the family hub development. Nearly the last slide, I think, and I can't remember. It's good levels of development allows children to grow up as competent and confident learners, communicators, healthy in mind, body and spirit, secure in their sense of belonging and the knowledge that they make a valued contribution to society. I can't think of a more noble endeavour than being able to be a part of that journey. And I'm delighted to have been able to share with you our journey in the early stages of Thrive at 5. Grateful for the support. We are developing a national playbook and talking to the DFE and others who are interested in monitoring our progress.